Welcome everyone to the Captive Audience. I am Kevin Hoare, and it is the 19th of May, 2025. Welcome to the show. I'm going to kind of rifle through a lot of news here. It's going to be another one of these abbreviated shows, but I do want to um, draw your attention to a very important bill that actually is making its way through the legislature, and it's kind of troubling because it seems to be focused on making sure that in a state where we cannot afford to apparently um, provide public defense to citizens who lack the means for an attorney, supposedly, um, we are going to go and take $21 million and give it to uh, illegal immigrants, who they've decided they're going to help with trying to avoid deportation and other criminal charges. So this is Senate Bill 703. The reporter that covers Oregon for the Epoch Times, Scotty Barnes, wrote a pretty detailed piece about this. It would give $6 million to nonprofits to help eligible immigrant families. And it says those protected by DACA, for example, to apply for legal status. Separately, House Bill 2543 would allocate $15 million to replenish the Universal Representation Fund. Established in 2022 under Senate Bill 1543, the fund has already helped 6,500 migrants in Oregon receive free legal counsel in a state where 5,500 criminal defendants are now waiting for a court-appointed attorney. Of course, they are spending like $500 million on that. And, so we have a public defender crisis for people who are entitled to them, and they are out spending money giving legal help to people who are not entitled to anything of the kind. And Democrat Kaisi Jama said it's a matter of equity and human rights, and that everyone deserves due process, which in this particular case, he is saying extends to people who are in the country illegally and may well have committed crimes. But as we know, that's not turned out to be a barrier. And as a use of taxpayer funds, the article talked to several different folks about their reaction to this. The executive director for Common Sense for Oregon, Monique Despain, who ran for the 4th Congressional District against Val Hoyle last year, and unfortunately was not successful. She questions the constitutionality of providing any taxpayer-funded attorneys for issues of immigration law. The Sixth Amendment of the Constitution specifically guarantees rights of the accused in criminal prosecutions. It doesn't apply to providing assistance of counsel for defense of every person embroiled in any legal proceeding. Immigrants who are trying to address their legal status are not criminal defendants. She said, at a time when the state can't even meet its basic constitutional requirement to provide lawyers for criminal defendants, we should not be providing them for civil matters for an immigrant working on their legal status. Leaving legal citizens who are criminal defendants waiting while millions are spent on those who are not entitled is a fraud on the taxpayers and an abuse of our criminal justice system. And then they go and kind of delve into the question of whether public funding is necessary. Ricky Ruiz, who's the co-chair of the BIPOC caucus, said on Instagram, "Now more than ever, we must work together to protect some of our most vulnerable populations in Oregon." And they have declared an emergency. They said it's an emergency. And meanwhile, Representative Ed Deal, a Republican, said he appreciates that the $6 million request is narrowly focused on DACA recipients and special immigrant visa holders from Iraq and Afghanistan. These groups, he said, have deep ties to our communities and in many cases have contributed meaningfully to our country. He's concerned about fiscal priorities. This bill directs taxpayer money intended to serve our state's most vulnerable citizens towards helping non-citizens. adjust their immigration status. Those funds would be better spent on pressing needs like elderly care, services for individuals with disabilities, foster care, and mental health treatment. In addition, there are many nonprofit organizations, both local and national, that already help support immigrants with their legal processes. He said it's worth asking whether public dollars are necessary when private and philanthropic sources could fulfill this role. It's also worth asking if Oregon's legal landscape can accommodate more cases, he said. And then it kind of goes and delves into the public defense crisis, which we've talked about before, and which so far Tina Kotek, the governor, who signed sweeping legislation in 2023 to address this, has so far failed. And the number of people when it was considered a crisis initially was only about 1,000. Now the number is 5,500. And of course, there's 1,000 people that were waiting when that was a crisis. What is it now? When it's 5,500 and they've spent an enormous sum of money. So I think this is something that deserves our attention. And actually, it's time that people got out there and responded to this. So, hi, Lori, good to see you. But I also think that these two the Senate bill and the House bill, this is really just tin air. This is obviously grandstanding with regard to the Trump administration. We're sort of tired of this because it's costing a lot of money and we don't frankly have the money to do it. Not anymore. Not when we're finding that a lot of money has been wasted and stolen along the way. So, speaking of money being wasted and stolen, Ed Deal, state representative, also commented on, he said that Oregon is facing likely a steep cut in federal Medicare funding, Medicaid funding, I should say, not Medicare, Medicaid, which is really welfare. It's not it's the senior health benefits. So, the state has built one of the most expansive Medicaid systems in the country, with nearly 1 in 3 Oregonians enrolled in the Oregon Health Plan, the state's Medicaid program. But in doing so, we've stretched resources so thin that the most vulnerable among us are at risk of being left behind, which is ironic for a program that was really supposed to be designed just for that. And many of the Democrats are taking a wait and see approach, given the federal funding uncertainty. They're waiting to see so they can complain once the funding's cut off, rather than being proactive and doing something about it. And Representative Deal kind of goes on to explain that the recent congressional proposal does pare back the funding to states. It actually tightens the scrutiny on who is and is not qualified to get it, because they've been pretty loose about it and letting just about anybody on for almost any reason, and sometimes seemingly for no reason at all. But the Medicaid program in the most recent biennium here, it cost $29.1 billion. That's a huge amount. That's, I think, at least a fifth of the state's all funds budget. 9.7 billion of the 29 is 9.7 is state money. And it's worth looking into this because, frankly, this is big money. It's a huge impact on the budget. And as we just heard, they're just expanding what they are trying to give money to and not paying attention to this core responsibility to truly the state's most vulnerable citizens. And so have a look at this, because Representative Deal is trying to raise the red flag now so that someone starts paying attention. And that's a serious matter. You might have heard, actually, I'll stick to some Oregon news here, and then we'll go and talk about some of the national news before we wrap up today. Oregon is working on guidance for local courthouses if the immigrations and customs enforcement agents show up This is because of what happened in Wisconsin, the recent arrest of a judge who allegedly helped an immigrant evade federal agents, took active steps to assist in the evasion of federal agents by this illegal immigrant. And now they're exploring options here in Oregon to give courts appropriate guidance what to do. State officials can't point to any confined immigration requests at Oregon courthouses since Donald Trump returned to office. But they want to help local courts navigate how to deal with the possibility and comply with Oregon law as they interpret it. In the absence of a uniform policy, some courthouses are issuing their own direction to staff. And Megan Flynn, the Oregon Chief Justice, as the administrative head of the Judicial Department, has the authority to issue orders that apply to all courts. And Sprague, who is, let's see, who is Sprague? I don't know who Sprague is. Confirmed that guidance is being explored, but no final decision has been made yet. So on April 25th, however, FBI agents arrested Judge Hannah Dugan at the Milwaukee courthouse in Wisconsin for allegedly helping this immigrant evade federal agents. And they accused her of directing the individual and his attorney to exit through a separate door. On Tuesday, a federal grand jury indicted her and Dugan who pled not guilty. And so for federal obstruction charges. So this is going to go on here as a debate, but the trial court administrator at the Washington County Courthouse said his direction to courthouse staff is we are not going to assist and not impede. And so that's in Washington County. We may find that there could be quite a few different policies around the state ultimately, but it's a serious matter. The presiding judge in Multnomah County, Judith Matarazzo, said she's not aware of any immigration incidents in the courthouse in downtown Portland, but she said courthouse staff are trying to make the building, quote, a safe space for anyone who has access to the facilities. Whether I can guarantee that safety given the Trump administration, I don't know, she said. All I can say is, as of yet, it hasn't been an issue. Safety. Safety for people who are sought by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. I wish that in Multnomah County, they were quite so concerned with the safety of citizens who are experiencing record crime. And of course, all the petty crimes that go with it. An Oregon housing employee was arrested in an embezzlement scheme in Lane County. Homes for Good, as it's called, has been a former employee has been arrested in an embezzlement scheme. Miranda Renee Wilcox, 59 years old, was arrested on May 14th after an investigation found that around $560,000 in funding was missing for this Homes for Good. And so the housing agency contacted police in September, and they traced it back to Wilcox, who worked as an HR and payroll specialist for nearly 10 years at this place. She left the position in September, and she now faces 1 count of forgery, 6 counts of aggravated theft, 16 counts of identity theft, and 114 counts of computer crime. This entity provides housing vouchers, weatherization assistance, and other services for low-income renters. It also works to develop, supposedly, more affordable housing. Apparently, more affordable livelihoods for HR and payroll specialists that work at these places. It says the agency's most recent financial audit from 2023 showed it spent more than $12 million to pay employees that fiscal year. $560,000 out of $12 million is quite a significant sum. That should not have actually been even possible. But anyway, this is Oregon, where it's corruption in a cardigan. Oregon Forestry Department overpromises and underdelivers on timber harvest. I know. The good news keeps coming. Um, the ODF, the Oregon Department of Forestry, has for decades been responsible and it has been overpromising and under-delivering with businesses and counties enduring hardships due to inconsistent timber sales. There is a bill, House Bill 3103, which seeks to address these concerns by requiring the ODF to create a 5-year projection on sustainable harvest levels by the end of next year, to offer 1/5 of this timber for sale annually. If there's a deficit in volume from the previous year, it will be added to the volume of the following year. And the proposal accounts for exceptions due to changing forest dynamics, wildfire, disease, and pests. And so, this is this really dates back to when counties placed thousands of acres of forest land in a public trust with the state of Oregon. And apparently having the government take care of your forest land is kind of like having your dog watch your dinner for you. They're going to drool and then they're going to eat it as soon as you leave the room or fall asleep. But they've failed in meeting all their projections, and there's been no penalty for that. So it looks like there might be a change coming. It's about time. Homelessness continues to rise in the Portland area, even as increased services help thousands. And that's a kind way to put it. In other words, the homeless industrial complex is continuing to grow in leaps and bounds, as is homelessness. And just in Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas, the number of homeless people is higher than ever, according to the latest accounts for the National Biannual Homeless Count. It's known as a point-in-time count, and it's mandated every year by the feds. And surveyors identified 12,034 homeless people in the Tri-County region. 87% of them are residing in Multnomah County. More than half those counted were unsheltered, which makes it sound like we just didn't do enough, when in fact, many of these people who are offered tents all the time just live right outside and they don't care because they're doing fentanyl. Anyway, this is the highest total since they began counting, and they add thousands of people every year. So I guess somebody who's in charge of this must think it's a success. But if you ask the people in the Tri-County area, they're actually this is a massive fail, and they've turned the state into a giant magnet for all of this. Here's some good news. Multnomah County Chief Diversity Officer resigns. Hopefully they will eliminate the position, but I don't think we'll be that lucky. But she's stepping down after apparently diversifying all kinds of stuff. And of course, Jessica Vega Peterson was her boss. It is Fowler made, get this, $197,252 a year. $200,000 to diversify stuff and actually not add any value to the services that are provided, much less deal with the crisis we just heard is growing in leaps and bounds in Multnomah County in particular. So I say time to save at least $200,000. But it's good news because she stepped down. Maybe she'll move on to some other state where she can ruin things there. Oregon's unemployment rate was 4.7% in April. It's up a 0.1% from March. It's been gradually rising from 4.1% in April of 2024. So right now, it really is looking like we're Oregon's economy is probably slowing, and Meanwhile, they've made it business unfriendly and they're spending gobs of money. And guess what? They're going to ask for more taxes. And here's a great example. The top 14 taxes the legislature may pass in the next 30 days. The Oregon Catalyst has put out an article, which is excellent, and details what these taxes are that we might expect to see in the next 30 days, which is essentially the final 30 days of the state legislative session. They're going to rob the kicker. They're going to try to pass a gas tax, a wage tax, a bike tax, a truck tax, and a car tax, supposedly to fund transportation. A 3% property tax, I guess that's the statewide property tax, the 8% beer and wine tax, a timber tax, a drink tax, $120 million Google Facebook tax, a 250% marriage fee hike, a 4% tire tax, that's still alive, a vaping, hookah, and tobacco tax, a $500 million hospital healthcare tax, an $800 million jock tax. I don't know what that is. An RV vehicle fee, they're going to double it, and hotel tax to fund wildlife because, that's what hotels are for, is to make it expensive to stay there so you can fund wildlife. What did hotels ever do to wildlife? I don't know. Anyway, take a look at those and share them with everybody you know. But expect to see Tina Kotek sign as many as 50 bills this week. I guess this week's number should be about 46 as of the end of the week. And it lists out what all these are. And you will find one after the other that not one of them actually solves any of the problems that are the most pressing the state's facing, not even the ones that rank in the top 10. And they actually add more regulation and more cost to our lives. And so definitely let people know about that. But we have to make sure that we stand up to what they're trying to do, which is tax and regulate us to death, and by letting people know that this is what they're doing. By the way, the Oregon Humanities and the Federation of State Humanities Councils filed a lawsuit. They're trying to force the National Endowment for the Humanities to keep giving them money for their woke idiot programs. And when you go and take a look, and I've covered this before, of what they're doing, it's one advertisement for woke trans art. And, this is something people are getting really tired of. And in an era where we're trying to cut costs because the deficit's literally out of control at the federal level, these guys are going to go try to sue and see if they can force the Trump administration to give them their money anyway. I say they should spend a lot of money on lawyers. I don't think it's going to work. You probably heard about President Trump sued CBS. Well, it looks like CBS is starting to crack under the weight of the $20 billion Trump lawsuit. And the CBS News CEO, Wendy McMahon, has resigned as a result. There are others that have also left, but she's the big fish so far. And it suggests that they're probably going to lose a lot of money in this lawsuit. She and others were patting themselves on the back as she leaves and goes out the door, but they tried to commit a fraud on the American people and tried to disadvantage Trump and advantage Kamala Harris in the 2024 election by doctoring that 60 Minutes interview, for example. And it looks like they're going to get to the facts on this. She said the past few months have been challenging. It's become clear the company and I do not agree on the same path forward. It's time for me to move on, she said. Sure. Yeah. As you leave a massive mess, financial mess in your wake, but it couldn't happen to a nicer company. They deserve it. They blew it. And maybe that'll serve as a lesson to others. Last story I wanted to cover tonight. President Trump has responded to Joe Biden's cancer diagnosis as the White House assures the public that its current medical team is actually a very good one that he has. And he did send a heartfelt message to President Biden. It is a stage 4, aggressive stage 4 prostate cancer that's spread to the bone in the area. And I don't know how someone who has access to unlimited high quality medical care would not have caught this sooner, but maybe it did happen that fast. I am kind of the belief that they knew this for a while and rolled it out conveniently right when Joe Biden was starting to get a tremendous amount of scrutiny for his activity, his interview with the prosecutor, and if you recall, last Friday there was a leak of the interaction of the audio that took place between the prosecutor and Joe Biden, and even more stuff is starting to come out as people publish books, and it looks like this guy was listless and in charge of 5,000 nuclear weapons, but he just frankly didn't know what was going on or what he was doing. And didn't know when he was vice president versus Senate, lost track of when his son passed away from cancer. And it got all covered up. In fact, the media participated in the cover up, and it's a pretty serious matter at this point. I'm with Alex Berenson, who actually writes a pretty good column, and he said, "Welcome to the cover up for the cover up." He said, I'm going to post this. You can read it and decide for yourself. Yeah, the Otto Pen was busy. President Otto Pen was actually really in charge of all of this, but have a look, because Alex Berenson makes a pretty compelling case for why what is normally a slow-growing cancer that can be detected through a simple blood test, literally at any time, a PSA test, could go unidentified. And then suddenly, on the day that he's receiving a ton of scrutiny for being cognitively impaired while he was president, and having a disastrous interview on The View where his wife had to step in and explain things on his behalf, that in fact, Joe Biden is being rescued by a sympathy story that they've known about for a while. And so anyway, I do think it's reasonable. Folks should pray for him, and then, but I do think that it may actually result in Hunter and Dr. Jill not making as much money off of his book, which sounds kind of like the Lord's justice, in all honesty. I'm just going to say it. And there's many reasons to ask some hard questions about why that report came out on the day it did. So have a look at that and tell me what you think as we go in a future show. Anyway, that's sort of the long and the short of it tonight. I hope you enjoyed the show. I wish all of you a fantastic evening, and please share the show with everyone you can. And we'll see you on the next episode of The Captive Audience.